Well, hello, YouTube. I have a lot of stuff to go through tonight. Little things, literally little things, lots of little things. I'm going to compare scales and how some things are usable and some things may be not usable and some may be usable when you don't necessarily expect it. We're going to be discussing these differences between actual scales, things that people use as a term for scale a lot of times, and the difference between mini scale, the scale the minis themselves are, and the scale the builds are for them. And then we'll also be discussing throwing scale out the window and just making it have the rule of cool so it looks good on the table. All three of which are good example, good, perfectly valid ways to do it. And we're just going to discuss which one you might want to do. So welcome. This is Campaign Terrain. Tonight I'm not actually building anything, but I will be showing a lot of terrain and a lot of minis. So I am your host, That Guy Cross. Welcome to the basement. And I hope you'll stick around for a while and we can talk about little things in different sizes. So first things first, I'm going to get some thank yous out of the way because in the last 2 episodes, I've gotten 2 new Patreon supporters. So I want to make sure to give the shout out for that. So I'm going to cover some, throw some love around here and there, and then we will jump right into it, or jump down into it because it's little. All right, so let's go overhead here. Oop, that's not overhead, that's overhead. You'll notice that I now have 5 names on this, which is amazing. So thanks to Solo Nick, who has joined about 4 weeks ago, and I just got onto the overhead like 2 weeks ago. And to Mia Geeked. Mia is a lovely, wonderful person, has a Discord. You can go join Mia's Discord as well. Come to mine, and I will point you at hers, or you can just comment down in the bottom, and she may see yours and give a link or whichever. So I've got Digital Calibrator. That's a in-person physically comes over to here in the basement and helps me with some audio and some video. So big shout outs to her. And the next one is Patrick Walther, longtime supporter of the channel. Love the help. Dungeon Matron, that's Lisa. Lisa has her own Discord. There's a link to it down below because lots of people like to hang out there and it's a good time. So there's links to Lisa's Discord in the down by mine. The doobly-doo. And then Solo Nick has 2, oops, I'm showing the wrong camera, has 2 different channels. One is called Solo Nick, and the other one is called Climbing Moss. I got it right this time. It's called Climbing Moss. Solo Nick is about minis and painting and art and this type of stuff, and Climbing Moss is when he and his go on like walkabouts or vacations and they talk about history or pop culture or whichever. So both of those are cool. Mia Geek keeps threatening to have a channel, but I don't think it's happened yet. So yeah, Mia's got some stuff going on. Hey, LC, Loosely Collected. Good to see you in the house, buddy. All right, so we are going to get rid of this one. I'm going to switch to the right-hand cam. As you know, the right-hand cam tends to flash out the front camera if I turn on the light first. So I'm switching to the camera, which I move, so I'm gonna have to adjustificate it. There we go. And then turn on this here light. Oops. All right, all is light with the world. Right with the world. Okay, that was a bad pun, low-hanging fruit. So we are gonna talk about actual scales first. What is scale? And then we are going to go into different interpretations of the phrase scale and the concept of scale within the tabletop role-playing and wargaming community. There's quite a bit to that, and I will try to cover the ground as quickly as I can. First off, scale. You can adjust your scale by shrinking things down and making them bigger. So you could do that with 3D printing, or if you print little standees, that sort of thing. You can even do it with an old school like architect scale where you can actually change the scale of things. I do know how to use this, and I do use this when I am creating some of my diagrams for what I'm going to build, because I try to stick pretty much to a strict 1/48 scale. That means 1 inch equals 4 feet. I'm not going to bother going through all of the ins and outs of how to use one of these tonight. That's not in the beginner course. Okay, I build in a 148. That's 1 inch equals 4 feet. That is a fairly common actual architectural build for when they're building demo buildings for pitching their architecture firm or their architecture plan, or models in science museums, things like that. 148 is a fairly common scale. A lot of people build or draw in that outside of the mini industry. However, in the mini industry, there's 2 different common scales. One is 1 inch equals 5 feet. That's the size that Dungeons and Dragons claims 1 square inch is. 1 square inch is 25 feet, 5 by 5. But that's not how they build their minis. We'll get to that in a minute. The other scale, which isn't a scale, is either 25 millimeter, 28 millimeter, 30 millimeter, 32 millimeter, or heroic. And all of those are slightly different. Some are just stylistic, the way the companies or the individuals create their miniatures. But there's also 40 millimeter, which is a different, which is noticeably larger and gets used in some things, but we don't typically use that in the most minis games. There are 40 millimeter minis games, especially superhero and Western games. I don't play any of those. I don't run any of those. I don't own rules for any of those, so we're not covering that. So what is 25 millimeter or 28 or 30 or 32? Originally, technically speaking, 25 millimeters was the distance from the base of the foot of a figure to their eyeball. Not this guy, he's leaning over. To their eyeball when standing up. So this would have been 25 millimeters from right here at the toe or the heel up to where the eyeball is. However, some minis, and I had some, but I can't seem to find them here tonight quickly. I think some of these older ones were quite a bit shorter than that. Now, 25 millimeters is not quite an inch. Oh, Mrs. Lynn dropped in. Hello as well. So we got a loosely collected Mrs. Lynn, and I've got a third one out there somewhere. All right, so these are by Raupartha. These are by Heritage. These are by Rapham, and these are by more Rapham. These are all 25 millimeter, except they're not, because that's what D&D used as the scale, but it's not what the companies actually necessarily made. They made what came out looking good, and it had to do with 2 different things: how good a detail they could get small, or what they really want to accentuate by making them larger. So these are some old skeleton soldiers, and these are from the base of their foot to their eyeball, probably 28 millimeter. But overall to the top of their heads, probably 30 or 31 millimeters. So these don't fit any of those scales. Now, calling it millimeter is not a scale, because that doesn't tell you how many millimeters are in a foot or a meter of person. If you were to take a 25 millimeter miniature and shrink it down to 1 inch, and most people are somewhere close to 6 feet. Adult males on most of the world, as it is now, are just shy of 6 feet. I'm a little over. I have friends that are way over. I have friends that are way under. And we're not talking medical conditions such as dwarfism and such. We're just talking a standard male across the world in different regions, cultures, and diets, because diet growing up can make a big difference. So basically, 25 millimeter, which is an inch, is 25.4 millimeters. So if it's 25 millimeters from the base of the foot to the eye, that's about an inch. If you add the top of the skull on top of that to be just under 6 feet, that's give or take 1/60th scale. 1/60th scale is close to what D&D uses for their minis, which is a 1/64th scale. And then you get into people that say they have a 32 millimeter or a 30 or a whichever, and 28. And scale. And it's not a scale, that's a size. And a lot of those aren't to the eyeball. A lot of those are to the top of the head. And a lot of those don't include just the... Where's my regular ones? There's one. Those don't include just from the base of the foot to the eyeball. Sometimes that also includes from the base of the base to the top of the head. Well, this guy's got a helmet on, and his helmet actually has an extra skull on top. So that's a bad example. But that would be considered their quote-unquote scale. And that comes out to, we'll call that not quite 1 1/4 inches. So if you're doing a 48 scale like mine, this guy would be not quite 5 feet. But again, it has to do with, they made them, a lot of them really bulky. If you notice, his armor is really chunky, so it'll show up. And so it's got enough detail where you can tell what he is. But some of them, as technology, this is a 30 or 40-year-old mini, as the technology has gotten better for making them, you can see some of the amazing detail on these that came out later from 2 separate companies. And both of these are significantly taller than my little dude here. And they are way over an inch. So if you're doing 1/64 or 1/50, these guys would be huge. So we get into the rule of cool, but that's not that's not really the last place we need to go before we get into that. You will notice that this guy has a base. His base is, give or take, 1 inch. Now, it's called a 25 millimeter, and if you really look, it is 25 millimeter. So it is not quite an inch, because it would need another 0.4 millimeters to be an inch. This from a different company where they didn't care about the size of the base. These were designed for wargaming, where the base mattered because it matters on movement. But a lot of games now use the front of the figure, the front of the base, the top, the middle of the figure, etc. So there's different ways to do that. This one did not care so much about the base. And so you'll notice that its base is significantly larger. It's both wider and round, so it sticks out on all sides. So that's another size. And then these guys, I don't know what they were thinking, because this one's like Mondo compared to the others. So I keep thinking to myself, I'm going to pop these off of these bases and put them on something smaller. And I haven't done that. I'm not likely to do that soon. So a general rule for scale is 1 inch is 4 feet, that's 1/48, or 1 inch is 5 feet, that's 1/60th scale. Now, how big is a building? Roughly speaking, a story, a floor, a level, a layer of a building is approximately 10 feet. That will give you enough clearance for headroom, and then if you need to, in the ceiling or floor, to put things like vents, wires, plumbing, etc. So a story is about 10 feet. 10 feet by mine would be 2.5 inches. 10 feet by D&D would be 2 inches. Well, this guy with his weapon and his base is just under 2 inches. So if you had no lip of the lid fitting down in, this guy would just fit. But these are officially licensed D&D figures. This one's by a company called Jada, and these are supposed to be to D&D scale. But this is a human, and this is a human. And that guy is 1/2 inch taller than mine. But they're supposed to be the same scale. So we start getting very quickly into rule of cool. And then there's the one that's really kind of my pet peeve, especially about games where they expect it to be a certain, where a base is one size. Alexi says, in my opinion, scale is overrated, especially with the TTRPG. Correct. I agree. That's kind of where I'm going with this, is rule of cool is better. Make it look right if you're playing with 3D terrain or people at all. With war games, I can see how they might want to be more specific because you have line of sight and all of that. But to be honest, I am not going to go put my head down on a table and look to see if my little guy can see the other little guy. If I'm like, this guy's about a 6-foot guy and that's about an 8-foot pillar, he can't see over it and we're done. But where was I? Oh, right. So this is 1 inch. Now he's sitting diagonal on this base. So actually his feet are almost an inch apart by themselves. They are 7/8 of an inch apart. That's 20 millimeters, give or take. Now, in my scale, that puts his feet at 3.5 feet apart. He is literally, instead of standing like a person stands, he would be standing like that. And nobody stands like that. So when you get into the larger scales where it's still supposed to be 1 inch is like 5 feet, and the guy is 1.5 inches tall. I say guy, gender doesn't matter. But the guy is 1 is 1.5 inches tall, and he's still standing like that because it's the cool, awesome, epic, heroic pose. And well, kind of like this guy standing here, he's full attention. Dun, dun. And nobody stands like that. It would be uncomfortable to do that all day. I mean, look at this guy. He's not even in the middle of a lunge. He's just sitting here waiting for the next thing. He's almost like at a ready rest. He's ready to jump into action. By their own scale, he's almost 7 feet tall. And look how wide this guy's got his feet planted. I mean, now, can you use figures like this on this scale? Yes, absolutely. But here's where it gets into the scale of the different sizes. Right? We already showed how big this guy is. This one's by the same company. This one's also by Jada. This is an official D&D thing. This is supposed to be a young, but it doesn't say how young, red dragon. Well, I hope he's really, really young. Because in some games, I don't know about in D&D, but in some games, their wingspan can be 100 meters. That's 40 inches. There's no way this guy is close to it's 39 and some change inches. There's no way this guy is 39 inches tall or wide. So he's like either just absolutely a hatchling or way out of scale. But where are you going to put a 40-inch dragon on your table? That will take up the table. So I understand why they do this. Now, these figures in here some of them are the same figures, so we know where the scale is on those. Now, these are also by D&D, but these are Nulzers. Nulzers are a different scale entirely. You'll notice how these look big and clunky and cartoon picture-y and almost like a comic book hero. And these are far more realistic in scope and scale. Man, you can't see anything there, gray on gray in that package. But these are allegedly, because it's D&D, to the same scale. These ladies, because they're both female, these ladies are even shorter than my old school guy. But if this is the same scale as this, and if these women were around 5 feet, this guy's like 7.5 feet tall. And both of them are human-sized or medium characters in Dungeons & Dragons. And that's fine. You just got to be aware of that. Again, it only really matters if you build your terrain way out of scale, or if you have, or if you're going for a line of sight issue in a game. This one's sort of the same scale. This is by a completely different company, designed for use with D&D and several other games. And this guy's supposed to be a big barbarian guy. He's literally a barbarian. Forgive his axe. His axe is upside down. It's supposed to be flipped around the other way and attached to that wrist. So just ignore that for a minute. But you'll notice he's also significantly taller than those ladies, but not as tall as that guy. So he's somewhere in the middle. So what's a medium-sized character? Who knows? Okay. Can you use things out of scale? Oh, absolutely. Does it at some point get ludicrous? Oh, absolutely. I've just reminded myself this has nothing to do with anything. I always forget to tell people this, so when I see my sign, I tell people, please like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this. I also, the comments really drive the algorithm, so like, share, subscribe, comment, or come to my Discord. And please, if you really, really, really dislike my content, make sure to hit dislike, because dislike also drives the algorithm. And if you just hate what I'm doing, I'll take that too. I would like to know why. So if you hit a dislike, tell me why. Tell me what I did wrong. Okay. Moving on. So, I have old school, nope, those guys are alive. Old school dead guys by two different companies. And you'll notice that even these skeletons are different sizes and different bulkiness, and they were both very much designed to go with Dungeons and Dragons and Tunnels and Trolls. These figures are from the 80s. And even then, the scales were different. We're talking brand name stuff, and we're talking non-brand name stuff. So you got the D&D with the official, and you got the D&D that's not really D&D, but is designed for it. And then you can go completely crazy with it. Here's a Disney Kung Fu Panda one that I got at Dollar Tree. If you not supported, but I'd take a sponsorship if you hit me up. So you will notice that this is Master Sifu, who's supposed to be very, very short. But if you ignore that he's Master Sifu and you just need figure on the table, he's actually just about the right size for this. So he's super chunky, but you can use things that are completely not for gaming at all. Speaking of which, I have some things I got at Dollar General, haven't put into use yet. I've got a zombie pirate army, a skeleton army, and a mummy army. I'm going to use the mummy army because they stand up in the package best. So all of these figures are about the same scale within these three packages. And by scale, I mean the same size to each other. So if this guy stands here, that mummy is, pardon the pun, monstrously tall. But if I need a bunch of zombies and mummies for an undead army, would I put these on the table and use them? Oh, you betcha. Absolutely. So are they big and huge and out of the... Yes. Is that still okay? Yes, that's fine. Same for the zombie pirates, which are the ones I'm most likely to use, and just say they're not zombies because, well, pirates get used more than the zombies do in my games. And then I've got the skeletons. And why? I don't know why this skeleton has wings. That's weird. But anyway, so then you get into... don't worry, I'm getting to building. We will cover some terrain here in a minute. Okay, so I've got a bunch of different figures from a bunch of different places that I use all together. These are my go-tos. I just pick them out, use them on the table, and put them back. They are, as I've said, radically different in some sizes. If you look at the size of this Gondorian Ranger, probably a different Gondorian Ranger, totally not Strider. But if you match the tops of their bases up, oh, he's actually standing on a little platform. If you match the bottoms of their feet up, that's not too far off. But the amount of detail that can get into modern machining is so much better. That's why some of the older ones are clunky and what I call cartoony style, which I love. I love this older style. But recently, I've been doing a farm challenge. And I wanted some animals. I've got some animals, but I didn't have them painted up or anything, so the only ones I ended up sticking in the background were these two cows. And the cows look pretty good. They're normal-sized cows. They're just a cow standing next to each other. But if you put it next to the one I call my little guy, that's like an auroch, if you know your extinct animal history there. The back of this cow is taller than this figure. I've been around a lot of cows. I've never found one I can't see over, and I'm 6'1". So this cow is way out of scale. But back here at the back of the pasture, doing their thing, great, and getting their graze on with a couple of pieces of fences. I could design two different ones here. This is just another example of scale doesn't matter because that cow's technically not going to come over that fence, and it's going to become an impediment for anybody trying to climb that fence. So behind a fence, at the back of the game thing, just off to the side when you're gaming, does it matter about that scale? No, it's going to look perfect. Now, I've got these orange and yellow piggies, and I've got orange and yellow... I'm going to go with horned sheep. And those are relatively close in size. The sheep are a little big, but it's a fantasy world anyway, right? So these large cows and these normal sheep and these only slightly large goats are all from the same set. Now here's the thing. This is the cow. This is the horse. There's no way that that horse is going to support this guy. Could be a pony or a foal. So those are all from one set. Here's where it gets weird. Here are other horses from the same set. Now this is dollar store, discount store kind of scale, so we're not expecting much. But these two both came out of the same package compared to that guy. Ludicrous. So I also, as I said, just recently built these fences. These fences came in this same package. This fence is taller than the guy, but it's the right size for this horse. So again, if you put this fence and this horse way at the back, and then you've got some other stuff in the way, and you got this guy at the front, can you still put that on the same battlefield? Sure. Why not? It's fine. I've also got some really huge geese if people want to see them. People always like the geese, so let me get one of the geese out. So just showing off here. There's also a monstrously large goose and a killer bunny the size of a Rottweiler. So, you know, everybody needs the Rottweiler bunny. All right, so let me grab all my large ones, put them back in here because I don't use those. All right, now before I put the lid on this, here's an interesting thing. This is Fun Bucket on the farm. So this is all farm, right? But it came with this lid. If you look, this lid is stone over a chasm or a gap and the handle is actually a bridge. It's designed and textured to look like it. So this, where everything else in here is too big or too small, this was on the lid and would look perfect painted up and used on it for minis. Oh, I'm out of focus. So you can find right things that will work in all of these situations. Now, speaking of horses, two last things about horses. This guy's a little headless because I never put these together. But this horse was from an old Games Workshop game. This horse is from the same era, but not the same game, but the same company, and is significantly smaller. And they were put out within like a year of each other. Also, look at the size of this knight on the horse and the size of this one on foot. They are not the same scale, and they're from the same game. This is just irritating the heck out of me. I don't know why it's not focusing. There we go. So, even within one game, they don't get the scale right. Not just that company, lots of companies. I'm not dissing on any one particular company here, and there's nothing wrong with it. You can play with all of these. So, now, I was talking a minute ago about stories and sizes of buildings. I recently built a city, or parts of a city, with blocks that go together, and this is them. So I made mine 3 inches tall. Why? Because I wanted basically foot square, so that's 3 inches. So 3 by 3 tall by everything is based on 3 by 3 cubes. So this is one of my bridges that's supposed to go between 2 of the levels, but it has this brick size, which is a pretty good size for a railing. It could go a little higher, but it's fine. And so that is a good size for that. One of these, I got the wild idea to build a room inside one of these boxes so that could be used. You set up walls and things inside it and set it up. The problem is the room I used, I had already made the floor too small before I extended the walls downward. So by the time I made this 3 inches tall, I didn't have the clearance. So this is still almost 2 inches in here. And we know that this guy, from the bottom of his base to the tip of his spear, is just about exactly 2 inches. And he fits in there. But I couldn't put a lid on here because the lid has a lip inside the thing. And so I can't just put them away. If it was the full depth, I could. So you need to think about things like that. But this is a 3 inch tall block. Perfect for an alleyway or something like that. However, when you get into 3 inches for building stories, like the story of a building, this is just about 3 inches from here to here on the short-sided wall, not the ones with the gables. So does that look fine for that figure? Yes, absolutely. Does it look fine for this tall? Well, that guy's a monster. This taller, much bigger figure? Yes. Would those still work together? Yes. Would it work if it was only 2.5 inches? I really don't think so. I don't think it would work with the taller figures. If you're trying to, if you want to look at them close up, or if you're doing a diorama, or if you're doing a war game with line of sight. So I tend to build my houses about 3 inches to where the flat ceiling would be inside. It fits my 3 inches by 3 inches by 3 inches. Now, I recently found out that historically I'm building my houses way too small. I'm not going to show you that. I've got another smaller house. It's on the farm build. You can go look at it. So I've been building my houses too small. So this is one of my larger scale, and it looks perfect with any of these figures I toss out here. Of course, all of the ones I'm finding are all from the same set. Here's one from... Here's 4 different styles, and they all look fine with it. So rule of cool works out. Oh, I'm not showing you the front of the house. There you go. So rule of cool works out for that. Rule of cool is make it look good. The only thing I do to keep mine in mind is I start to build essentially from 1/48 scale, but then sometimes scale things up or down. And I always keep a figure on the table as that's roughly the height of a person, of a human being. Now, I've got some modular ones that I just didn't want to get too tall. I didn't want them to get too big. This one here, this piece can fit in this piece, or it could be designed, I didn't do this one, but it could be designed so that it has the smaller platform here and will fit on here as well. These I didn't even build the same size because rule of cool. Oh, I did. They don't look it because they're in different materials. So is that the same as my 3-inch scale? No, it's a little bit shorter. But is it over 2.5 inches? Yes. So again, rule of cool. Now this is not designed to have a room inside it and hold anything, so the height of the minis compared to it don't really matter. But the only thing I suggest is that if you are building a single piece, make all your floors close to the same height. If you are building multiple houses next to each other, they don't have to be the same size at all. They will have been built by different people at different eras with different materials. So these two look good together. They're at different scales. They're at basically the same scale, but they're different height choices. This one's about 2.5 inches, and this one's about 3 inches. And they look fine together. So then we get into two other things I want to talk about, and then we can and then I'm going to kind of wrap this up. But let me go to, oh man, y'all have been talking. Let me go look. Stripping the diecast figures to bare metal and repainting them. Wonder if they're any better than seeing them buried under a thick paint coat. Yeah, I don't paint minis. The last minis I ever painted were these guys. I've got about 20 or 30 of these. Got some orcs. I got some dwarven archers, things like that to go with them. I've got some. Anyway, I haven't painted anything since. I don't want to admit how old I am, but it's been a while. And I joke all the time that the color they are in the pack is the color they go on the table. So if I am to ever use, where'd those two ladies go? Oh, he's sitting on. If I'm ever to use these on a table, they will likely go on the table gray. I know some people just tuned out. I do not like. You tell me in the comments. It's all good. But if I were to paint them and paint things to have them on the table, I would not bother repainting these because I don't care that much, and these are not players' characters. I don't mean player characters. I mean characters that belong to the players. These would be NPCs. They're going to be on the table for long enough to get beat with a sword or exchange some information, and then they're gone, and they'll disappear again. So these I would not strip. If I was to strip minis down to the bare metal, I have done experiments into that, and on bare metal, honestly, I would just soak them in rubbing alcohol for like a week. I would put them in a bucket, make sure the alcohol's, or a tub or something, make sure the alcohol is higher than the volume of the height of the minis in there, put a lid on it to keep the alcohol being alcohol for a week, and then come by with a toothbrush. If that doesn't work, leave them for another week. I have never I can't imagine them not lasting for 2 weeks. I mean, not for the paint lasting 2 weeks. Now, with enamel paints or oil-based, I don't know about that. But with acrylics on metal, yeah, it'll come right off. Now, for stripping plastic ones down to them, I would use hot soapy water and just a toothbrush and just let them go with that. Maybe refresh the water every once in a while. I am not positive. It may just be the way it feels to my fingers, but I'm under the impression that submerging styrene figures, because these are made out of styrene, that's why the specific model glue works. Submerging styrene figures into rubbing alcohol for a week, I believe it makes the plastic softer and more malleable and potentially able to be messed up. And I don't want to do that. So for plastic figures, soap and water. Just my opinion. It's neither here nor there. Okay, I said there were 2 things left. They are stairs. Stairs are the bane of scale. Stairs and bricks. I guess there's 3 things to cover. If you look at this stair, and compared to this guy's height, he's having to climb over a couch every time he goes up a stair. He's having to navigate a sofa to go from here to here. But with nice, big, wide, chunky stairs like this, you'll notice how nicely and easily and readily, readily he stands on the different heights. That's all well and good. If it works, it works, and it's certainly good for faster on the table. Put that down, he stands there, he's halfway up the stairs. Movement modifiers can come into effect, all of that. But these stairs are far more appropriate. They look more correct. They are closer to the right height. These are about 4 millimeters thick because each stair is made out of peeled foam core. The foam core starts off about 5 millimeters. Each layer of paper is about a 0.5 mil. So by the time you peel off both pieces of paper, you end up with about a 4 mil stair. A 4 mil stair is about just about 1/6 of a foot. 1/6 of a foot is 2 inches. So these are actually too short. So these are too tall. These are too short, but these are easy because that's the thickness some of this foam comes in. And for the distance you want the stairs to take, you can stand a mini on it. These look far more realistic, look much better in my opinion, and yet there is no way in heck I'm getting a figure to stand on those. Now you can do things like stick a straight pin under one of the stairs or a couple of them and have him be supported on that, or you can cut holes in your stairs for the base edge to slip in and all of that. But to me, I would basically, if I was running this on a game and I had this and somebody movement points got halfway up the stairs, I would put them at the base and like tilt them onto it and be, congratulations, you're halfway up. So that's stairs. And also I mentioned bricks. If you look at it, these look great. Normal size brick, big chunky brick, right? Yeah, no, those are big slabs of stone. If you were trying to make a brick small enough to look right, a brick is going to be smaller than this guy's foot and certainly smaller than his booted foot. So I'm not planning on making any bricks that are this big. No, thank you. 2 reasons. 1, I'll lose every one of them. 2, way too much. The smaller you make a brick, the more bricks you have to make for the same area, which means more time you have to spend making them. And 3rd, the more bricks you make, the more time you have to spend putting them on. So I'm not doing any of that. So again, rule of cool. Last thing, but I got one last thing to cover, but let me go through the things first and then we'll talk about what I'm doing over the next couple weeks. Skeletons are always a problem because you make them accurate and risk them breaking? Yeah, because bones at 25 millimeter or 32 millimeter even. Bones are tiny. I have some, I'm not going to show them. There's pictures on my Discord. You can ask me if you want. I can show you there. I've got some night haunts, something like that from James, and they got shipped to me and they got squished in shipping. And more than half of them have broken wrists and ankles. They're pretty good in scale, but they'll just, yeah. True scale sucks. Models should be chunky. I agree. If you're going to play with them, if you're doing a diorama, true scale is magnificent because you're going to do it once, stick it on the thing, put it on the shelf or in a cabinet. If you're going to use it all the time, chunky is good. Chunky is sturdy. This suckers, other than the little place I broke off on this one's helmet, these, I've got like 6 or 7 of them, and I literally, when I'm done with games, I take them and toss them in here. I am not careful with them. And these things have lasted, including their non-varnished, non-coat, non-protective coat, just regular acrylics on these have lasted. I guess I am going to have to say how old I am. Let's just say these, the paint job on these is more than old enough to vote, more than old enough to drink. They're that old. I think it's 24 years right now. Oh, along with scales, you've also got the issue with shingles. These shingles are getting closer to size, but they're still a pretty big scale. But if you make itty bitty tiny shingles, that's 9 million itty bitty tiny shingles you'd have to put on. No. Okay, I have a box of critters. These are minis I've gotten from lots of different places for lots of different things just to use over time. So, dragons. Let's start with the dragons. I've got two different piles. I've got a pile of dragons in here, two piles of dragons, and a pile of luck minis. We'll cover that in a minute. There is no way that dragon is in any kind of gaming scale, and they're all about that same size. Now, if I needed to say on the battle game, here's where the dragons or the wyverns or the flying lizards or whatever, would I put them on the table? Absolutely. Not even a question. I have no idea why they have all this patent stuff on it. I wonder if I could get that off without taking a paint. But anyway, so these are tiny. Also, I think one of these dragons is actually a dinosaur, but that's neither here nor there. Then you get into stuff like this other one. These are mystical fantasy ones because these are safari is the type of animal and lair of the dragons. So again, these are tiny for dragons, but if you need just a winged lizard, excellent way to go. These are good luck minis. So these are Asian dragons, but there's also Pegasus, which is tiny. But if you needed to represent the spirit of Pegasus or the spirit of a flying horse, no. But can you still use these? Oh, absolutely. Just say it's a different kind of creature. Then we get into fun stuff like these. These are spiders. This says mini spider collection, but they're not mini. These are about the size of real spiders. But real size compared to your character, if you need giant spiders, good to go. Sorry, probably should have had an arachnophobia warning. Sorry about that. Dinosaurs? Were there dinosaurs smaller than people? Yes. Were the sauroptids smaller than people? Oh, heck no. So is this in scale? No. But if I need a creature on a table, done. You get into fun stuff like giraffes are tall. A giraffe compared to this guy should be about that tall. Not that tall. So, lots of fun to play with. That's pretty much all I got for scale and figures and stories of buildings and stuff. So let me get back to reading the comments, and then we'll see if we'll have any jumping off points. And if not, then I can talk about what's going on with YouTube as a company and what I've got planned for at least next week. So let me get the lid on that, which doesn't want to go. There it goes. Okay. Oh, and I forgot. This is my outhouse I built for my farm challenge, which I think I got pretty close to looking right for scale and size. But if you look at it compared to an actual outhouse, no. But it's a fantasy world. What do I care? Oh, and Lisa, thanks for the door. Lisa, Dungeon Matron, who I mentioned on my Patreon patrons earlier, provided me this door. So the door has been put to good use. Excellent. So, yeah, let's read the chat. True scale sucks. True scale where they cover key weak spots with rotten armor and clothing. Yeah, that looks good because you can make some fairly sturdy zombies by giving them like, say they're zombie pirates and give them bucket boots that are, say those haven't rotted away yet. A monstrously large deuce. I did not say a monstrously large deuce, but I do find that funny, and it is the sort of thing I would say. I bet that goose has amazing golden eggs. Yeah, the size of your head. Now, at the price of eggs, that's good. That's a good bargain. You can't eat a golden egg. It's gold. Yeah, but if it's an actual egg inside, it's probably still worth more because eggs are expensive. Gooseraptor. Goose can't fight. Goose can fight cassowary. Yeah, Cassowaries are dangerous, scary, beastie birds, but I think that if you had a bunch of geese or even a bunch of chickens, because chickens still know that they are still dinosaurs, I could see them going after a cassowary and at least scaring it. I'm not saying they'd win, but okay. Loosely Collected says all of my D&D diecast stuff is on a shelf with D&D collectibles. Yeah, all of mine is sitting on a thing. I haven't opened them yet. They're collectible. They'll totally be worth something. They're never going to be worth anything. Or if they are, it's going to be in 30 years. Excuse me. Yeah, I've got a bunch of D&D books, but mine are in boxes right now, sadly. I just don't have space. I just don't have shelf space anywhere. Every architect in the Middle Ages had different feet size. Can you say that everything on the floor is exactly 10 feet high? Well, it's exactly 10 of Bob's feet high. Use LA's totally awesome and a sonic cleaner and a blast through acrylics. Nothing. Oh, yeah, I haven't had a chance to use a sonic cleaner. I am a broke. So as a broke, I do not have sonic cleaner money. Good baby dragons, by the way. Yeah, baby dragons, you can always use those. You can, especially if your character needs a familiar or they found an egg and have hatched it. Yeah. Geese are scary, especially in the packs of 100. Yeah, they like this one place I used to work at, and it used to just be horrible to go out there sometimes. They never came after me, but they went after a couple people in that parking lot where I used to work. Geese are frightening, and they have teeth on their bills. They're not actually really teeth, but they're teeth. They're sharp, they're pointy, they're hard, and they're designed to grasp and pull food into their mouth. That's teeth. That's what teeth are. So I think I've covered all of the chat for now. So Google looks like it's buffering. So, I mean, YouTube, not Google. Well, the same company. So I think I'm just going to keep chatting. So next week on the plan is to make a bunch of bricks and tiles. And tiles to me are just half thick bricks. So I'm going to be making a bunch of bricks like in this size and maybe some bigger, chunkier ones for some other builds. And I'm just going to be cutting and cutting and cutting. And we can talk about cutters. We can talk about whether you like a handheld, whether you like a tabletop, whether you don't like any of that and you go for just knives on all your stuff, whether you like the sharp blade because it gives you the nice sharp edges, or if you like a dull blade because you don't mind the tearing out, ripping pieces because it's going into ruins. We can talk about, do you like how texture your bricks by holding them in your hand and rubbing them back together like I usually do for speed, or do you put them in a container and put rocks or chunks of concrete or whatever in it and shake them up that way? I have done both. I do both. I have containers of rocks. We could talk about what sizes of bricks and or tiles we like to use over expanses of, if you're trying to make a pattern or if you're just trying to make everything fit together, but you won't have to think about it. You just want to be able to pick one out of a box and know it'll fit, or if you want them all the same size and do the full offset brick pattern like this and this. We can also talk about setting up a brick texture on things and then applying that to items as opposed to individual bricks placed one by one. Both of those are valid. Both of those come out looking great, and it's really up to the person doing it. So we will discuss all of that. My next week's thing is going to be all about bricks, I think. YouTube is mad at me and is buffering and telling me I'm not getting enough bandwidth, which is understandable. I'm in a basement on Wi-Fi. So it's 10 to 8. I really like to keep it between an hour and an hour and a half. I don't want to cut it short. So if y'all can still hear me, let me know and I'll keep going. If you can't still hear me, you won't know the fact that if YouTube drops me, I'm going to stop for the night. So, yeah, I really can't do anything about the bandwidth. And I have nothing really to talk about unless I'm talking about the chat. So I hope you can hear me. And I hope you can respond back to me, in which case we can talk about next week's bricks and tiles that I want to build on next week's video. Or cut, not build, cut. So hit me up in the chat. I am going to duck over to the side for a second and grab a couple of things if I can reach them to show you kind of where I'm going with the bricks and stuff next week. Give me just a second. I'm not really going anywhere. Y'all can still hear me, but I presume, other than the lag, y'all can still hear me. So here's a bunch of brick stuff, and we'll talk about that for next week. These are not the boxes I was looking for, but they may be the boxes we talk about because I may not be able to find the box I was looking for. Yep, I can't find it. Okay, so like I said, we will talk about bricks and different sizes of bricks and different scales of bricks. And well, probably not scale. We pretty much beat scale to death on this tonight. So we will talk about bricks and such on next week's run. Yeah. Let me set that out of the way there. I was going to show you, I have a bunch of things I cut to found it. To mass produce some, what am I trying to say? Bricks. I was going to cut, no. I was going to mass produce some standing stones out of these. So I had a bunch of these. Decided, well, one, they're too big. I can make them a lot smaller unless you just want epic and monolithic. But I can also just take all of my blanks that I've already got and cut those down into bricks and tiles. Because that way, waste not, want not. Because let's face it, I am never going to make... Well, if I do make, it will be for a different reason, and at that point, I will be able to afford them. But basically, I'm never going to turn all of these into standing stones. So I can take some of my blanks and cut them down into bricks. So that is where I am with that. I really am trying to stretch this to 8 o'clock, but I don't really have to, and YouTube's giving me fits anyway. So, or it's having fits. It's not giving me fits. Okay. No, it's not your Wi-Fi. It's my Wi-Fi. It could be yours too, but my Wi-Fi is always questionable here in the basement. So at this point, I'm looking at all these and I'm like, man, I have a bunch of stuff to clean up and I'm tired and I'm hungry. So I think I may be calling it for tonight, and I will catch y'all next week and we can talk about bricks. Between now and then, I'm going to leave this one out because I still haven't gotten the moss on all of these, which I thought I had. So I'll be mossing some of those during the week as well. Those will come out looking essentially like the chunkier version of this with the grass, which some of y'all have seen me do this on the live stream. So, yeah, if you have your own set measured, it cuts your craft time in half and improves the look of your product. Yeah, I prefer individually laid bricks. Now, this does look nice. But you can look at it and see, well, not on that side, but you can look at it and see that these are not individual bricks. Now, at table height, or what I call 3-foot fabulous, I don't know where I got that. It's not my saying. Feel free to use it. I stole it. You can too. At 3-foot fabulous, these look fine, but they are super symmetrical, especially for potentially an older building in a medieval setting. These were done by taking strips of foam core, peeling the paper off of one side, and then cutting and then widening lines into it, which we can talk about next week on how to do that. And then I just took that entire thing and glued it onto the board, onto the building. It was actually kind of a pain because it wants to come loose from the paper. So if I had to do it again, I would make the bricks, I would make sure to not cut all the way through, and then I would peel the back part before I glued it on, just for better adhesion. So we can talk about all of that on next week's episode. And for right now, I'm going to start cleaning up. I'm going to leave this one out so it reminds me to do the moss over the week. And I think that is it, unless y'all have something else to ask me. Yeah, standardization is the thing. I want to actually get into modularization of everything other than, city blocks. That's like large expanses of land, and those can be modularized. Plus, it's in a town. That's going to be fairly simple. But I have found that once I start to get into modularization, it gets deep in the weeds of, I can do it, but then it looks like a old or a current and inexpensive video game where you have gridded pattern, and from a distance you can totally tell. So I'm always torn between modularization one-offs and modularization and standardization for ease. And it's always a trade-off. You just got to make it look good. On the other hand, almost everything can be hidden if you play it right. Like that gate I made last week was an absolute pain. I'm happy to have it done, and it looks great, and I don't know what I did with it right before the show. I don't know. But anyway, if you look at the picture really closely on my Discord, you can see that hinge that I made is super big and chonky and bleh, but I've covered it with some grasses like these standing in the way of it. And grasses and mosses can cover a multitude of sins and gaps. See all these gaps and holes here in this place where the sand, where the glue as it dried pulled up, but that caused the sand to pull apart? I'll just stick moss in all those holes and you'll never know. I mean, I'll know, and now you'll know because I told you, but my players will never know. So lots of things can be hidden with vegetation. Lots of things can be hidden with highlights, lowlights, dry brushing, washes, and vegetation. And you can always stick another piece of trim on it. If you look here, I couldn't figure out how to make it. It was just, I just was frustrated with it and couldn't get it to go right. And if you look, these corners are just held in with hot glue at a weird, funky angle because it covered that gap. And I didn't even feel the need to cover the gap, except you could see the white foam, the white of the foam underneath. And I was not having that. So dry brush, wash, highlights, lowlights, vegetation, and trim work. And you can hide any of this. So if your scale looks a little bit off, lift the building, lower the building, build something up next to the building so the building looks shorter. There's always a way to fix it. There's always a way to fix it. There's always a way to fix it. So yeah, that's all I got. And we have reached 8 o'clock. I started 1 minute late, and it's 2 minutes until it'll be 1 after. So let YouTube get over its lag, because it's doing it again. Yeah, YouTube's being kind of obnoxious tonight, but all right. I'm going to switch this light off, switch to the front camera, and hopefully you'll be able to see me and hear me do that. And then I'll sign off for the night because, like I said, I really don't have any other reason to talk y'all's ears off. So give me just a minute. Come around here. Easier to turn the light off here. Click. Come back over here. I have a power cord wrapped around my chair leg. That's not good. Okay. We'll come over here and switch to this front camera. Oh, last quick shout to my patrons. Again, big shout out to all of my patrons. Appreciate all of you. So much love. I cannot tell you how humbling it is that people are willing to go that distance for this weird little putting things together that I do, and I super appreciate it. Solonick, my second newest, Mia Geeked, my newest. Please check out their channels and or their Discords. If you need information about how to get to those, come to my Discord. Please come to my Discord anyway. So yeah, and of course, Digital Calibrator, Patrick Walter, and Dungeon Matron have been here a long time. Much love. Okay, front camera so you can see me and I can go away now. Okay, so that's it. That's scale. Lots of things are little, lots of things are big, and you can make them work together. You just got to play around with it. So there's no right and wrong way. There's really not. Yeah, so this has been Campaign Terrain. I hope you've enjoyed it. If it's your first time here, welcome. Glad you were here. If it is your 80th time here, welcome. Glad you're here. If you are returning, you're one of what I call my campaigners, and I'm glad to have each and every one of you. We're all making miniatures. We're making dollhouses. We're making war game terrain. We're making role-playing terrain. Some people are just into the itty-bitties because they like the itty-bitties and think they're cute. whatever. We're all in it together. So I have much love for all of you. Until next time, this has been Campaign Terrain. I'm your host, That Guy Cross, and I wish you luck in your campaign, both in real life and on the table. Thank you so much for coming, and you have a great night.